5 minutes here. I guess we can start the meeting here. Let's call the meeting to order. Okay. The meeting is called to order. Do we have a declaration of conflicts of interest? Anything? No?
No.
No. Okay, and approval for the previous minutes. I was looking at them just recently that they look good. Do we have approval for the minutes? What was that?
Richard, you're coming through like a little bird, your voice. I don't know why.
You are.
That any better? I just switched microphones.
There you are. You're back.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, so we got the declaration of conflicts of interest and approval of minutes. Do we have a approval for the minutes?
I can move to approve the
Yes.
minutes.
Okay, perfect. And how about next approval of the agenda?
I was just wondering, Ryan, if we could just add a little thing under new business, a couple of tools that I've recently discovered that I just wanted to briefly show you guys in case they might be useful to us or to recommend to the
Perfect.
city.
We can put that under new business.
Thank you.
Number
That'll be
two.
pretty quick.
Put it number B. Okay.
And actually, if you can hear me, I've got an item that I would just like to bring up as well about.
Okay, we can put
about-
that for number C then in new business.
Okay.
Perfect. And
I
Okay.
had one thing. It's
Sure.
it's just to share, but if you wanted to add it in, I could share it in the.
Okay, we can put it in as number D as well then. Okay, perfect. Okay, is that, and other than that, let's approve the agenda here then. Okay. And moving on, reporting from Department Liaison. Do we have a report from Public Works?
No, and I think we need, at some point, we need a liaison person between our task force and Public Works. And I see that position as somebody that checks in with the head of Public Works, Scott Adams, or one of his assistants, and says, is there anything that I can report back to the task force or something that we may have been working on, and go to whoever at Public Works and get an update. I see that as the job of the Public Works liaison person. But before we do that any further, I just would like to say that I asked Jill Stewart to schedule Scott Adams to speak to us in the January meeting, which will be the third Tuesday in January. As you recall, our format or terms of reference changed this year, that we are to invite the head of each department in one particular month of the year, of the 12 months. And we had picked January to have Scott Adams come do a presentation to us, and we can ask him questions in preparation of the budget that Cobus City Hall presents, or the City Council presents. So I would suggest that in December, I think I mentioned this to Jill Stewart again, the mayor's secretary, that to put that on the agenda, that we will formulate questions from the task force for Scott Adams. So that's one thing. And then the other is, do we want to ask for a liaison person tonight, or do we want to wait for another month?
Maybe we can wait for another month. It gives us people time to think about it, and then we can the whole month. It kind of gives time for people to think about it. Yeah. I don't know. What does people like that decision, or unless you want, if somebody wants to do it.
I'd just like to, it would be very useful to the two of us who are new on the committee. We could just have a short sentence with just sort of what's expected of the liaisons, and maybe the names of the contacts. I mean, I'm happy to take on whatever, but I'd like to just know what it is that I'm expected to do. I'll fill any gap that you would like me to fill, but just, I mean, I didn't know Scott Adams's name, for instance, and your description just a second ago was very useful, but it'd be just nice to have just a one-page document with just what's expected and the contact names of people. So if you say, Richard, next time you've got to do this, right, I know who to contact.
Well,
Okay.
maybe Richard, we can ask Scott Adams. That's a good question for him in January. We could explain to him that we need a liaison person, and maybe he could tell us what he does and his department, like what they're in charge of. And then if he could ask, we could ask him, would he be our liaison person? And if not, or who in his department would be suitable for concerning bike and pedestrian and sidewalks and pathways, and that's a good question, and let's put that down for our December question, not to push off, and then ask Scott about that when he comes in January.
Perfect. Yeah.
Okay, that sounds perfect. It's good to get it from their perspective as well, to see what we have to do, and the more their input will definitely be beneficial.
I have, sorry, Ryan.
Okay.
A few things just under the Public Works banner. I apologize for not being here last month, especially for your first meeting with us. I had a conflict, so thanks, Joanne, for passing on my regrets for that. I just wanted to clarify, it was in the minutes for last month that Mayor said that they're going to be painting the crosswalks where the Confederation Trail meets the street. Is that correct? Is that what you understood from him last meeting?
Yes, and Carrie, I didn't answer your question. I had directed that to Ramona in an email, and she didn't answer it either. But Mayor Brown said that the crosswalks may only be painted in white. Originally, he had asked if they could be in green, but he came back saying that those crosswalks would be highlighting for bicycles and for pedestrians, and that they would be painted in white.
And that's, sorry, I apologize again, because I'm just trying to understand.
Sorry.
I wasn't here. So we're talking about the crosswalks where the Confederation Trail crosses a street. Like, for example, the one that they just did in Sherwood Road with the yellow paint, which is really eye-catching, I find. I drive by that one a lot. I don't know if you guys know the one I mean, up by the airport. But it was recently a crosswalk was painted there. There was not a crosswalk there before. And then the yellow paint was added on both sides, quite a large stretch of it, just to highlight that it was there, that the Confederation Trail crosses. And I have found as a driver, I feel much more comfortable with that intersection now being so visible. And I was wondering, my question was, and I was going to ask the mayor if he was here tonight, was, are they planning to do that at all of the other ones? Because I found that extremely helpful. And there are others other places where the Confed Trail crosses, where there's nothing at all. For example, the one up here on by the Winslow Irving, across the number 2 highway. I'm pointing because that's where it is for my house. Sorry, that doesn't help you at all. That one, there's no crossing. It goes across the number 2 highway. That is the barrier that's preventing me from taking my son and cycling into Charlottetown. We have done it. We have crossed there, but it's extremely dangerous. And the funny thing is that cars will stop if they see me, but some of them will, some of them won't. It's not a crosswalk. They're not required to. Other drivers aren't expecting it. So I was wondering, I just wanted to understand from your last meeting, is that something they're actually going to be doing, what they did on Sherwood Road at the other places? Or is this something that we or I could start to advocate for?
Well, I don't have answers to any of that, other than I did put a motion or an email from the task force previously back in August or September, I think asking, if it wasn't a motion, it was an email, asking if the crosswalks could be, because the mayor had recommended that, if they could be highlighted, because he really liked the one down by the Hillsborough Bridge across Grafton Street and how that was done and with the green paint. So I had put that in an email to Ramona for the ENS committee. I'll have to look here and see if it even made a motion. I don't know. So anyway, when the mayor came back with the results of that, he said that the crosswalks would be painted and highlighted. He said, just like they are at the corner of the arterial highway and Mount Edward Road. And that one's done in white, Carrie. There's a little yellow patch at one end where the trail is, but it's done in white. But I really like your idea that certainly that one should be highlighted across Route 2 and made visible, just like the one across the Sherwood Road. Would you like to do a motion, or would you like to ask for a motion, and then would you like to send that to Ramona and have it done to the ENS committee?
I would be happy to pursue this. So if you think that's the best way, I was kind of looking and trying to get a sense of how many places in the city that the Confederation Trail specifically crosses a road and doesn't have a crosswalk. And I mean, personally, I feel like every single one should have a crosswalk. Do you agree with
I
me?
feel like almost most of them do, but they're white for the ones I can think of.
I know the one, Carrie, as a driver, I made note the other night and was like, wow, can you ever see the yellow?
Yes, it's
So
huge.
I had the same thought about, should we just move this forward and make that request? Like, it was shocking to me how quickly it just brought my attention. So, yeah, I stopped, right? I was like, this is unreal. And it really came in whether I felt like there's just a space of maybe 8 feet where the lines are not there, but it comes in quite deep. So it really makes you stop and pay attention.
Would
Probably
this
quite noticeable in the night as well.
Would this group be comfortable with putting forward a motion that would be like a recommendation that all intersections between the Confederation Trail and city streets and roads have the yellow paint as well as crosswalk signage and lines? Or is there,
Yes.
would that
Yeah.
be
Yeah, if you want to move it, I'll second it.
okay? You want me to repeat? I will
Well,
obviously
it's
write
the
that
minute
much
taker,
nicer than
it's
I'm
the
saying
minute
it.
taker. The only thing is, Carrie, you'll
Yeah.
have to get the form from Ramona, or I can send it to you to complete in Word so that she can send it on to the ENS committee. And then the ENS committee will send it to Public Works. That's how that one works.
Sorry, what's the ENS committee?
environment and sustainability.
Yeah.
So Ramona Doyle is one of our sustainability officers, and she used to be on this task force for 2 years. And then the terms of reference changed that she only needs to appear to us. I think we picked April, but anyway, once a year. So we're kind of, Richard, if we seem like we're fumbling a bit,
No, I'm just
because
trying
we're
to
on
learn
our
the
own.
processes.
But anyway, that's the ENS. So everything that our task force does, we're an advisory committee. Anything that has teeth has to go to the ENS committee, which is
Okay.
an advisory committee of council. And who chairs that is Mitch Tweel. Ramona Doyle sits on it. And I don't know who the other counselors are, to tell the truth. Now, we also deal with Katrina Christel, who's a state sustainability officer as well, but she was doing a maternity leave for Jessica Brown, and I see Jessica Brown's back. So I'm not sure if one's sustainable and one's environment, or what's going on there. I just send everything to Ramona, and then it goes to this ENS committee. But yeah, but it has to go on a report number 21-16, City of Charlottetown, for once we do a motion.
As the meeting note taker, so Carrie, you're asking the committee if they could be, if all crosswalks in Charlottetown could be made to be painted yellow and labeled properly.
I was going to say all crosswalks where the Confederation Trail intersects with.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, we could go farther than that perhaps, but
No, I just,
But that's
And
probably a good starting point.
it's a good.
And I would
starting
use
point.
the word to make them more visible.
Yes, I will definitely. I
and-
think, Joanne, there's usually they want you to justify sort of.
Yeah,
your-
the recommendation is what Sharon just gave us, that where the Confederation Trail intersects with city streets and city roads, including the Route 2, where the trail crosses, Route 2 by Winslow Irving. I don't know if you need to put that in the recommendation. And then underneath it, there's a blank there for a couple of paragraphs. So that's where you could put in, we compared the two, and we recognize that one is more visible than the other or something.
And I think we also to note in there to reduce any barriers from people whose choice of transportation is active. To reduce that barrier and that fear for them, I think is what we want to do as a task force. So we want to increase people assessing access, and that speaks directly, to the fear and the security, Carrie, that you would and many would be concerned about crossing Route 2 right at that particular place. So to reduce the barriers for all persons to be more active within the city of Charlottetown.
That's very good. Thank you. And
Did we
Sharon,
have a-
I don't mind.
do we have a seconder on this, or?
I'll second it, Joanne McCrae.
And Sharon, I don't mind sending you, once I type it up to look nice, I can send you the exact wording then, if that
That would be
helps.
phenomenal. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going back to what I sent. Just don't change anything you've done here. It's great, but I'll just give you the background. Okay, on August the 11th, we directed it to the chairman, Mitch Tweel, members of the ENS committee, subject Mayor's Task Force on AT, recommendation. In keeping with the safety for all users at the intersections of where the Confederation Trail crosses Longworth Avenue, Allen Street, and Belvedere Avenue, it was recommended by the Task Force on Active Transportation that the City of Charlottetown install new pedestrian pathways in the middle for all users with green paint and have decals for cycling on either side of this middle pathway, which would represent the bike lanes. So we sent that to Ramona on August the 11th, and she would have sent it to Mitch Tweel. And under the report part, like that you can add paragraphs, I said, these improvements would be similar to the new style of active transportation pathway crossings at the intersection of the Hillsborough Bridge and the Grafton Street and Water Street. And so I think in response to that one, that's what Mayor Brown was getting back to us at the last meeting. And that's where I said, well, you know, the one was very well done down at the arterial highway, but yes, it's white paint, but it was very well done. But like I said, I think you can, you know, identify that they've done a good job at the crossing at Sherwood Road and made it very visible, but they need to do something with the one across Route 2 at the Winslow Irving. I take it, is that still city limits, Carrie?
I wasn't sure. I mean, I'm within city limits and I live slightly farther out than that.
Then it must be.
But it's the highway, so again, I wasn't sure if that was, if they might come back and tell us that's the province or something, but worth a try. So, and I think all of them. Regarding the paint, this was brought to my attention by Peter Ricavina, who used to be a part of our group here, and still very observant as he goes about the city and sends me pictures of things. So the paint at the beautiful green paint at the bridge, have you noticed? Have you been by there lately? It's
Is it faded?
let me send you the picture. Let me show you the picture that he sent me, if I can here just quickly. Is this working? Am I showing my screen?
Yep.
Yes, now we see your screen.
Okay. This is the picture of the
It's
beautiful
on
green
gray.
paint.
It doesn't look green.
There's
Not
not
green
much
anymore.
green.
And you know what? That's what Jason White or somebody said from the city that we had talked to us last spring, is that the snowplow would just take that colored paint right out.
Really?
And consequently, that's why they paint the pedestrian crosswalks every year.
One thing that was mentioned by another BFC member was the possibility for colored pavement instead. And I couldn't remember if that was something we had talked about here, but she sent me some resources, and I guess even one thing that's possible is to use just like, for example, our island red clay could easily be used, apparently, I don't know anything about it, but apparently could be used to color pavement. And so I wasn't sure if that was something, I couldn't remember if we've discussed that possibility, or I wondered if that's something the city could consider as a longer, with something with more longevity than the paint.
I don't know. Do you want to wait and discuss that with Scott Adams when he comes in January? That could be
That
another
probably would
question
be
for him.
good. Yeah, I'll write that down. So,
And
yeah,
I
that would
wonder,
probably be a good thing for that.
yeah, and I wonder, Carrie, when you write up your resolution, that these, the repainting of these crosswalks should be done in the spring or have priority in the spring. You know, and not left till like August kind of thing, right? Because we recognize that users use them all year round, and we recognize the winter and snow conditions, and these should have priority for repainting when it's done in early spring, something like that.
I was just gonna say, like, there's many more different kinds of brains out in the world than mine, but I mean, this again could, like, you know, do they do it once a year? Can we do it twice a year? What are we looking like in terms of the amount of, you know, snow we actually receive? What kind of paint do they use? What do they use around the rest of the world? And if it's a human resource issue, can we again make a request, to increase the human resources for that? I do know myself that they only have that crew on specific periods. It need to be a certain temperature, all of those types of factors. But it would be great to hear, maybe that's getting a little bit too much in the weeds for this task force. But I think until we know, we don't know what we don't know. But definitely, if we want people to remove barriers for people and for people to feel safe and to have purposeful trips for A, B, C, and D, we have to make it okay for people.
To follow up, sorry. To follow up, Margaret, and also on a point Carrie made, I mean, we do have a fair amount of snow, but I mean, it's not that snowy. There's got to be places further north that just deal with this on a regular basis. So do they just have to paint every year in April, May, or is there some sort of special paint they use? I mean,
I totally agree. I totally agree. And I will just say, I believe it's going to come down to human resources. I really, in my brain, I do not believe they've shifted the way the climate has shifted. And so the crews come on at different times. This is a crew that picks up picnic tables, it goes on and on and on. So I absolutely agree until we ask those specifics, we don't really know. And you can go to Chicago, New York City, all kinds of places with all kinds of snow, and they're painted. And sometimes if they're not painted, there's actually like a specific railing in some areas where it's totally identified that this is a specific active transportation lane. And to note this further, if you notice by Tim Hortons on University Avenue, the railing coming into the drive-through was always a brown railing. It's now painted red because people didn't see it. And so they would hit it with their mirrors on their car and so on. Like we need stuff stuffed in front of our face in this day and age to be able to trigger that for us until it becomes an automatic thing for us. That's just how our brains work. So I'm totally, I have great interest in this, and I've heard several times we don't have the human resources. I do believe they're building that capacity within the HR department themselves there. So I really think that we have to move this forward so that they can understand there are a vast majority of people that would, use AT for purpose if it was made safer for them.
Yep.
Very good point, Margaret. I went to that Winter Congress last year online, but I could look back maybe and see, or even reach out to Edmonton and see how often they paint their crosswalks and what they use. I could make that a little project. But this list of questions seems to me last year too, when we prepare our total list of questions, and we can add this in, the one you just made, Margaret, you could write that up for us, and we'll submit our list of questions maybe after the December meeting. It'll be in January, but get it to Scott Adams ahead of time, and he can have them, and have some answers for us. That's a possibility. So yeah, why don't we assign homework into the point that everybody come back with one question or two questions next month in December for Scott Adams. And I mean, we're kind of come up with some tonight, but and then we can get those put together and
Okay.
send them to him ahead of the meeting. Is that a worthwhile suggestion? Yeah.
That sounds, so everybody have at least one or two questions.
That'll also mean that we get specific answers back as well. So he'll have time to look it up. Or if I don't know, I'll look it up.
Yeah, it's a month away gives us plenty of time.
And with
So,
Provisio, sorry, Ryan, I was just going to say that we can still add more questions at the night of the meeting, you know, particularly when it comes to budget requests.
and
How
just,
do we do with all that?
Oh.
Is there anything else you want to add to that?
I just remembered one other thing that I was asked to bring up, which kind of falls under public works. So sorry. Hogging the mic tonight. It was, by the hospital where we have our beautiful new bypass lane, was recently completely torn up for some other, I assume, unrelated reason to do with the hospital. I don't know if anybody noticed this going by in the last month, but the new lane was completely torn up. Like they were digging, obviously, to whatever they were doing under the ground, and barriers put up that said route closed, or sidewalk closed, actually is what they said. And so Peter Rukavina as well sent this to me and said we should sort of be promoting the idea that just like when you close a road, when you're closing an active transportation pathway for someone, there should be the same sorts of, like, there should be an alternate route provided, and there should be notice provided, and that sort of thing. What do you guys think about that?
Oh, I think that's a good one. Carrie, if you want to move that one for another motion, I'll second it.
Yeah, I think I mean, they probably won't be able to do anything, but I think the point is that they need to be thinking about what they're doing all the time. So if you are ripping up sidewalks or an active transportation lane, you've got to realize that you've really put a lot of people in a difficult situation. Now suddenly I'm biking along a really very busy road when I didn't think I was going to be. Yeah, I'm less happy about that.
that more seems like a public awareness type thing where, like, maybe somebody in the city can phone the radio station and just let people know that this area is closed during this time for this specific reason. If there was more awareness in that kind of frame, I think it would be more beneficial, and I think that's probably what needs to be done in order to make people more aware of it. And maybe there could be some kind of website thing that you could go to that maybe, or maybe it's on the city website, just to let people know that maybe it's closed for 2 days or something along the lines of that. Probably the most efficient thing to do for that.
I think there's obviously a lot of value to that, and that's important. I just think if we ask them to come up with an alternative route for us anytime they do that, it just makes them have to think, okay, we are tearing up somebody's active transportation route here. Okay, if we were tearing up the road for cars, it would be on the radio, and they would have signposted an alternative route, a diversion. They would take a lot of care for drivers around that, and part of it would be public information. But they would.
I agree. It's on the, it is posted publicly when there's
Yep.
road closures or constructions. I see it all the time. It's on Twitter. I'm not sure if it's on Twitter. I don't know where it is, but I would love to see them also post alongside that, Richard, is AT lane also closed, reroute it, because the route could be different.
Yeah.
And I think it's considering it that we're all equal in this.
Yes.
So if you, for instance, are Ryan and his mode of transportation is, what an inconvenience for that, for him, so it is posted publicly. They do a pretty good job at that, because I've watched that closely. But we also can ask them to just, it's just another line, another couple lines they're typing on there. That's their public relations person and communications department.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Perfect.
Margaret, do you mean they do post AT lane closures, or you meant the road closures is what they
No,
post?
yeah, the road closures, the
Yeah.
city posts.
Okay, I was just
Yeah.
making sure I understood.
Yeah, so they would just have to add in, another couple of lines, AT lane also closed, alternative route, because it could be different.
Oh, it would, I mean, in this case with the hospital, it was only the AT lane that was.
Yeah, so sometimes you might be able to use the alternative route, but sometimes you can't. And I think, as Richard says, continuing to raise it is public awareness, and if we want people to move into that route and we want people being purposeful or just cycling for whatever it is, we have to be able to advocate for that and lobby for it.
Yeah, it's public awareness, but it's also awareness on the part of the city, right? If you are taking up an active transportation lane, it has to happen every now and again. Okay, fine, but think about it, right? You think about it when you're doing it for cars and you make arrangements for cars. So think about it when you're doing it for active transportation. Right?
Okay, I'll, Carrie, if you move that, I'll second it. And are we all in favor? And I'll send a motion on to the ENS. Everybody in favor?
Yeah.
Okay. Are you okay with that, Carrie?
Yeah, you don't mind sending this
No,
one?
I'll do that one if you do the
Okay.
other one on the
Great.
crosswalks. And people, just to back up a bit, we moved it and seconded the one on the crosswalks or the intersections. Is everybody in favor of that one? Just to sort of,
Yeah.
And that's to make them yellow at all of the active
visible and
transportation.
yellow. Yep,
Yeah.
Okay.
there we go. Oh, no.
Okay. And okay, how about moving on? Parks and Recreation. Do we have any report for that one?
Yeah, that's me. I'm the liaison person. So I've got quite a bunch here for you.
Okay.
Sharon, I'll try to talk slowly.
Why the heck did I decide to do it this month?
Do you know what? Do you know
I
what?
might be a little overwhelmed.
Well, if you wait,
Use Otter to record, or you can go back and watch it on YouTube.
no, you can find it on YouTube. If
Yeah.
a few days, and you can check with Ramona, if you
Okay.
go on Charlottetown CA YouTube and you just scroll on all the advisory meetings, will
Okay.
pop up. Last month was the first time I had to go back and look at it because I was looking for wording. Like, yeah, if you don't get he said, she said, we don't care.
Okay.
Do the best you can. All
I
right. First thing I have. All right. I wrote to the ENS committee recommending that Grafton Street East to Joe Giz Park Confederation Trail, where the Confederation Trail is, that we have recommended a shared pathway for bicycles, pedestrians, and other users for 2021. And the mayor reported last month that was not going ahead for 2021, and that we as an AT task force had to recommend it for 2022. And I'm just letting you know I did that. I wrote to Ramona Doyle, sustainable officer, and I asked her to follow up on that. So that has to go back into the budget. So I don't have a response on that other than to say that I did. So that was the first thing. You tell me when you're ready for the next one. Okay. Secondly, I did send a motion to the ENS committee about shared pathway being permitted in the Confederation Landing Park. I think the mayor's words were that all the pathways in the city parks are shared pathways. So I sent that motion to them. Thirdly, okay. Carrie had asked, and I report this at the meeting last time, she brought it up, it was very good, about the bike racks that had appeared or that were movable when we had the opening of the active transportation pathway on Riverside Drive. There was a beautiful bike rack there that we all used. And we wrote to I wrote to Katrina Crystal, who's another sustainable officer, and she wrote back saying, the bike racks that were at the AT path opening were our event bike racks. So the city has event bike racks. They are a special set of bike racks that are taken to the city or city affiliated events to maximize bike parking where one-time events may attract extra cyclists. There's a permanent bike rack installed at the Hillsborough Community Center, but at the time she was concerned with so many people biking to the path opening, we'd need extra bike parking. As such, she got Public Works to drop off one of the event bike racks. They aren't secured. So once the event is over, they're taken away again. So that's what happened that day. And she went on to say, aside from those few event racks, all of the city's bike racks stay put year round. If there's any need for additional bike parking in any particular locations, you can certainly let the city know, and it can consider adding new permanent bike racks in those spots. As far as the bike racks downtown, I'm not sure what is planned for winter maintenance. Katrina said, I can inquire about that with Public Works and get back to you. And I asked her to do that. And I haven't heard back from her. So I did ask about that. And I'll follow up on that. And I'm not finished, Ryan. The other thing I had was Margaret was going to contact Jeff Sinnott at Victoria Row Merchants Association. Margaret.
Yeah.
Okay, I did that. And so Jeff's response was it's a very, his term was kind of a weak group, essentially, like there's not a lot of structure around the meeting times and whatnot. I told him in essence what we had discussed about, you know, in terms of the active transportation and maneuvering through. He you know, for him, he just said, I think it wouldn't be a great idea to have people motorizing, you know, through there. They've had a couple, you know, incidents with people like kind of on the cobblestone, kind of it dips down a little bit and that kind of thing. And he was certainly open to working with the task force, but just said he probably wouldn't recommend that. I did ask him about a specific lane or way through that there. And, you know, he kind of was shaking his head a little bit, wondering where it would actually be located due to the fact that they have a kind of the grandstand, I guess, or maybe it's a stage for lack of a better term through there. But he did say at sometimes the year, it's certainly not as busy as others. But, you know, he thought it was, he actually thought it was great that it was actually coming up in the task force. So I just said I would report back to the group and tell them what he essentially said. So it wasn't a recommendation that he felt safe in making, because of several things through there.
Yeah, I think there would, like, if you allow people to go through there, I just feel there might be liability issues of somebody walking out, had too many drinks and you accidentally bumped into them, or there's, yeah, having a certain pathway might be good, but is it such a big deal for somebody on a bike to get off the bike and walk through that area? Like maybe if it was crowded, that would be the thing to do. Maybe if it was 3 o'clock in the morning, I think you could get away with it. But at a time when there's when it's full, it might not be. You might be getting into some troubled waters if that was my thought on it initially.
I mean, he did mention like even having signage, like some, I know they have some signage, but he did mention, sometimes a friendly reminder helps people because people will go through there on their bikes. There's no question people are doing it. He just said, it's closed for motor vehicles. So I think that's what it says. I don't believe it says that you have to get off your bike or whatnot, but he did say, this can be, he said, you can have signage that says this can be used in active transportation lane. The recommendation is you get off your bike or whatnot. So I wasn't really sure where we would sit with that.
The Victoria Row is really one of the most picturesque parts of the city. It's on all of the tourist brochures. It would be very nice to bike through it, but it's a pedestrian space. People are walking there with their kids. They're not paying attention to what's going on because they know that there's not motorized transport. So the kids are running sideways, and frankly, that's what it's for. And so you stick a bike in there and you're not going to be able to predict what the kid just in front of you is going to do. So unless you put up signs saying pedestrians have right of way, I think it's easier just to tell cyclists to dismount. If it was longer than 100 meters, my thinking would be different.
Yeah.
But I don't know where you would put in a bike path. I mean, as you said, on one side it's the stage, so you'd be going right next to the stage where the musicians are playing. On the other side, it's the patio, and people are sort of talking to people over the edge of the patio. So you'd be biking into them. So I don't see how there's an easy solution. And I'm not adverse to pedestrians having their own priority area, and it's only 100 meters. It's not the greatest inconvenience that we have to
You
do.
can also take an alternative route and go around it if you really wanted to.
Yeah. If it matters that much, there's a block south, there's a block north.
Exactly.
And personally, I agree. I think there are parts of the city that you can walk your bike. But when the former member wrote to us, the concern was there's no east-west corridor for cycling in the city of Charlottetown. Like Grafton Street is not perceived to be it's not perceived to be safe. If I've biked from the Confederation Center from that corner down Grafton Street, and I'm so afraid people are going to back out over me. So that's a difficulty. And the other one-way street would be down below Sydney. I'm not sure what it is. I mean, there's Water Street, which is, again, it's very busy. So last time, or a couple of months ago, Jason, I think it was in August, Jason White had said, the issue is, we don't have a proper safe corridor for cyclists to share sidewalks as a long-term project. And Jason said we need to get rid of one sidewalk on one side of the road and do the pathway. And Jason had said, where are we with the plan to make an east-west corridor? And he said that I should, include that in an email to the Environment and Sustainability Committee. So I hadn't done that. I mean, Ramona's going to come and talk to us. I think it's in April, which we can talk to her at that time, or I can put that on the ENS radar and just say that we have discussed Richmond Street And that's what we want them to know, is where are we with this plan? And maybe when they're recommending routes for shared bike paths, that and we do have recommendations, that they keep that in for consideration. So with regards to
I was just going to add in here, I think it's just a matter of time before Sydney Street becomes closed. I mean, we've heard it from the fire department that they can't get down there, and that's why, you know, they can't close that street, essentially. I mean, in other cities, Joanne, you know, you have to park miles to be able to get in, you know, to some part of the city type of thing. I think Jason brings up a good point, though. We're actually trying to change and shift, you know, a bit of how we think about things and the purpose and the culture. So we say, you know, you can go around it, and that's true. That's true today. I'm thinking about what, you know, if there ever becomes approval for Sydney Street to be closed too and just open to pedestrians, what does that look like for our AT people?
That's an interesting point. I hadn't heard that. But if we were on the ground, right? I mean, if this was proposed by the mayor next week, we could then actually put something in place right now. We wouldn't have to do a workaround like we're talking about with Victoria Row, where it's developed in such a way that putting in a path would be very problematic. But if we were on the ground with Sydney Street and the mayor said, right, we're going to convert that to pedestrians only next week, we can say, okay, we want the left side of the road or the right side of the road as active transport or whatever. Yeah, the east-west corridor is important, but I just can't see Victoria Row as the spot for it.
So is there something we could do as a task force in terms of if they move forward to, you know, close any other streets? I mean, you know, if you look at Great George Street, I mean, or not, sorry, not Great George. Is that Great George where the gallery is, the little restaurant there? I mean, you know, that's shut down half the time. I would never be surprised if that becomes a total pedestrian street. And I'm just wondering, as a task force, is there any way that we have any kind of legs here to put forth that if that does occur in the future, that we would make a recommendation that it, you know, that they make sure that there is an active transportation lane in there? That's a good point, Richard. Is that something we could do? Is there value in doing that?
Sure there is. I think you're both making excellent points. So there again, I think that's strong enough that we could make another motion, and that way it would go to Ens Committee and then go to council. If the city closes any other streets, such as it did with Richmond Street, to vehicles, or fix my wording, could we ensure that the city, or would the city ensure that active transportation pathway is a priority on those said streets? Does that sound all right?
I think it sounds very good. Yeah.
Okay.
But that would be that's public works. I mean, maybe we could mention that to in January, wouldn't it be? Or
Sure. But it's going to be whoever the owners of the restaurants and whoever lives in those areas that want it closed to vehicles, are going to have the clout with the city fathers and mothers. So we want to influence them. So if we've already got this motion on the books, and Margaret, you're right in tune, knowing that. I've heard that discussed different times about Sydney Street, right? It's been asked and refused and asked and refused. But when you look at other cities that have closed streets to vehicle traffic, yeah, no, that's you're right on the mark. Okay, I need a seconder for that one.
Sure. Yes, please.
Thanks, Richard.
And I think we
All
have to, yeah, sorry.
All in favor?
Yes.
Okay, motion carried.
And I think we have to move forward in terms of not going back, get it approved, and then having some type of a, rebuttal with them. I think we have to move forward and get it totally approved so that we can guarantee for people who come into this city and people who want to cycle here and make it like a really active vacation for themselves. And I got 3 kids and we want to take our bikes and we want to spend our day in the city, that I'm not watching, a 5-year-old. I just know that these streets are AT,
AT friendly.
Yeah.
Yep.
That makes a massive difference in how you can parent. You see people with their children driving their bikes and like there's one at the front and there's kids, in the middle, not. It's just, we want to make this as friendly and we want Prince Edward Island to be open for, for business and for pleasure for all.
I categorically agree. I mean, this is, it's got to be part of the city's marketing plan. If you look at every single tourist brochure which is produced by the city, Victoria Row is featured in all of them, often on the cover. Why? It's because it's a nice space. And it's a nice space because people are just wandering around aimlessly enjoying it.
Okay. Okay, I think that's all for Parks and Rec here. Do we have a report for police?
No report to police. Oh,
Okay, I got one more for you, Ryan.
Okay,
In the newspaper this week, it said that on the Confederation Trail, horses had been allowed on sections of the Confederation Trail as a pilot. And the reporter said it was very successful, and the province is meeting to decide if horses are going to be allowed Confederation Trail. And Trails PEI is opposed to the horses. I personally, by cycling in Nova Scotia, have witnessed horses' hooves in the trails over there. And it's really hard, like on your bicycle, there's holes, they disrupt it, whatever. And I don't think this pilot project was very true to the nature of Prince Edward Island, in that it was a very dry fall. And so the trail was wonderful to cycle on. It was nice and hard, but it was the same for the horses. They didn't make the hooves and grooves that they normally would. But I've written my emails and solicited some supporters in my efforts to point that out to the powers that be. But do you think horses should be allowed on the Confederation Trail within the city of Charlottetown?
oh, that's a kind of a tough question. Like, maybe if, like, yeah,
Who's going to clean up the horses after?
Yeah.
exactly.
That's the only.
Yeah,
Ryan, would you want to
I'm
meet
a
a
big fan of
horse?
horses.
If I was on my bicycle and I've got a bell and you're coming on your wheelchair, and Margaret, you're out for a walk and there's a horse galloping down. I mean, you know how busy the Confederation Trail is now. Do you think horses should be allowed on the trail? Sharon, you got your hand up.
Well, dogs are allowed on the trail. That's a whole other thing. Then you got a horse and a dog, and especially a dog that, well, my 2 dogs are yippy yappy, let me tell you. And if a horse came galloping down, there'd be a situation where they'd be running up to the horse. And so we're causing, like, it's just a big kettle of fish, I think. So my opinion would be no. Maybe it's not politically correct, but I feel
agree.
horses have lots to go to. They, it's the whole other 2 ends of the island.
And just from my experience of going on there unprepared, like, some of those bikers that are on those trails are going quite fast, and who knows what a horse would do if it's seen a bike going right past them right quick. Like, you would, yeah, like that's a no. Like I don't think that that's very safe for everybody. Like you, I know horses can be used for transportation, but we're not in the 1800s anymore. I don't know if that would be very good. Yeah, I can't see that being very socially acceptable. They're not even, the pathways aren't even that big. Like it would, big horse trying to maneuver from a horse and a speedy bike. I don't think that's a very good idea.
Even if you've got two riders together and they're side by side, that's the width of the trail, right? You're not getting past.
I don't even think you could fit
you're not
two
getting
in a
past.
row.
Yeah.
I guess what
Yeah.
I was just looking for was, do you envision our jurisdiction is the city of Charlottetown. So from Winslow into UPI, would you envision horses on the trail?
That's the thing, that there are actually horses at the university, of course.
Yes, I think that if it would be, I think within the city, if it says you can bring them within the city, I think some people will. And at UPEI, of course, the horses are there. Rurally, it's a bit different. The trails aren't, they're just, I go on the trail in Montague a lot, and you can walk for miles and see no one. It's definitely busier than it was 5 years ago. But within the city, with thinking about safety overall, I want to say yes. I want to say yes, let's let them do it, and then something may arise. But a lot of evidence or a lot of things you hear, especially with having Ryan's perspective or having a little 3-year-old on a bicycle, it's really hard to judge that. They're not wide. I can't imagine down by 1911 jail having a horse, and then the sides of that trail, you can drop down there. A good drop on the sides of those trails can be 3 feet, I feel, if not more. I can't imagine having meeting somebody there with the horse.
I think this is a useful discussion, because we should probably just nip it in the bud and just say that if the province is going to authorize this or not, we would quite like it not to happen in Charlottetown. We have
Just
no
for
idea what the province.
curiosity's sake, I wonder what they would say at UPEI. Like, has a horse ever been on that trail that connected from just for curiosity purposes? I'd like to know, because their perspective probably would be no, that's not a good idea either.
The issue is they've got a teaching herd of horses. They keep about 12 of them for the vet students, but the students will want to ride them, and they do ride them in the field. And you can just see, oh, well, I'll just go up a kilometer up the trail or down the trail or something. And it probably won't do much damage, and it'll probably just be an inconvenience. But as you say, it's just worth probably addressing this up front and just saying we don't think it's appropriate here, though the province might make it fine elsewhere. That's my thoughts anyway.
Okay, so Richard, if the province authorizes or not, the task force doesn't think horses should be permitted on the trail because it's not appropriate.
Within Charlottetown limits, yeah.
Yeah. Somebody want to second that? Ryan, thank you. Motion, do you want to vote on that one? Oh, good. Okay, motion carried. Thank you, everybody. Okay, Ryan, I'm going to be quiet for a little while.
Okay, so we don't have police. How about sustainability?
Well, that's me. I put everything under Parks and Recreation. Yeah, good luck with that, Sharon. just put Parks and Recreation and Sustainability all in there together. Guys, I'm not the Parks and Recreation liaison person. I'm the sustainability. And that's and that's
Okay.
Roots. And that was the Confederation Landing. No, it wasn't. That was Parks. Okay. Confederation Landing was Parks. I don't know. Anyway, all I know is Richmond Street was sustainability. I know that. So if you could sort that business out on discussion on please put that under sustainability, and then I'm going to be quiet.
If I can
Okay.
jump back to police for a second, Ryan.
Sure. Okay. Okay. I thought we
Just-
were done. Okay.
Sorry.
All right.
I think in the last month the police had their bike auction that they do most years, and one of our BFC guys went, and
Mhm.
he noticed that it's a good, like, it's a really popular event. A lot of people go. And he noticed that a lot of the bikes were in poor repair. And he was like, this kind of started a discussion with the group, and people were like, what if like BFC could partner with them, or the city could partner with them to kind of offer like repair workshops, or like repair people on site at the same time as the auction's taking place. And then, because we've talked about doing events like that anyway, like kind of teaching people how to do some basic bike stuff, and we've got community members and people we could talk to. What do you guys, or the task force? I don't know. Anyway, it was just some ideas that were kind of, Margaret's giving me the thumbs up.
Did you say the BFC?
I did. Sorry, I use that acronym a lot. Bike Friendly Community.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yep, that I represent when I'm wearing my other half.
Sure.
So, community group. Yeah, so we're just, if that's something, I don't know, I don't know, Margaret, if as police liaison, you'd want to like ask them about, obviously it's not been up for another year or something, but maybe that's.
Yeah, I'll ask about that for sure. I think it's a great idea. I was really surprised with the number of people there.
Yeah. It was well attended, and one thing we want to try to do is get bikes into the hands of people that need them, and bikes that work. So, yeah.
At the end of it, Carrie, what do they do with the bikes that are not auctioned off?
That's a great question. I don't know.
Okay, I'm gonna ask, I'll call the bylaw officer and ask him, because I did think about, could we take it a step further, and could we get those bikes, and could we actually go to Bike Friendly Community and say, hey, do you know anybody? You know, that could.
Because we've talked, yeah, sorry, I interrupted. We've talked to Ursula, like the newcomers group. We've talked, like, there are people that we could get bikes into the hands of. If they've still got bikes, we could certainly help facilitate that.
I'll ask on that. I'll ask for sure.
Thank you.
Right. And back at sustainability, do you have any more things to mention, Joanne?
No, thanks. I've said my piece. Thanks, Ryan, for everybody's patience.
Okay. And cycling PEI. Nothing? Wait. Bike Friendly Charlottetown, or BFC. I'm gonna start calling it that now.
BFC
I like
in future, yeah. They still haven't changed it on the agenda, but we are a bike-friendly community.
Okay, okay.
It's not your fault, Ryan, that's what it says. But we kept the BFC on purpose.
Yeah.
That's me again. So I'll just quickly, you may have seen online, we've just announced a new project we're starting. We received funding from the AT Fund, the provincial AT Fund. They've been really, really supportive of what we want to do. The full project is, we're calling it outreach and advocacy. We are doing lots of engagement and outreach is the plan with different groups and the public and stakeholders. And then Mitch, who's our whiz at this stuff, is going to put it together into a proper network plan for the 3, Charlottetown, Cornwall, and Stratford, which are the areas that are not covered in detail by the provincial plan that's happening by Upland, which you may have heard a little bit about as well. They're going to be covering like right up to the city and then sort of connections with the cities and Stratford, Cornwall. And so our project is going to be the network plan for within the cities. And it's all was, we received endorsements from all 3 mayors for this. So everybody's really supportive. The other part is going to be outreach, like educational stuff. We're going to do some video series and like wayfinding within the cities and like how to get around, whatever people want. So right now we have a survey available at our website. It's bfcpei.ca/survey, or I can just link it to you here in the chat. And it's very, very simple. It literally takes 3 minutes. So please feel free to take it yourself or share with your networks. It's really important that we want to collect information from people who cycle and who already care about it, but also people who have not made that shift in thinking or made that or considered it as a real possibility, because we're identifying what's getting in the way of that sort of thing. There, I just put it in the chat.
Okay, I see it right there.
Yeah, so that's kind of our exciting news, is that big project we're undertaking, and there's lots more of that to come in the new year, but for now, this is the starting point. So, yeah.
That sounds really interesting. And okay, and now moving on to new business. Number A was the municipal building accessibility update.
Okay, I was tasked with that one last time to write on behalf of the task force. And I wrote to Terry Bernard, Councillor Terry Bernard, and I have 2 emails to read to you as a group. So the first one's from Councillor Bernard, and he said the incident in the chairlift occurred because this is the one at Hillsborough Community Center where the chairlift didn't work. Okay, so the incident with Ryan in the chairlift occurred because the battery in the chairlift died. Having said that, a chairlift is not a person with a disability. It's not equipped to do that. A chairlift, as you know, is for people with bad knees or a back, etc., that find it difficult to climb stairs. The downstairs of the Hillsborough Community Center is wheelchair accessible with paved pathway to a rear door. But as Ryan pointed out, that's not where the event was held. It was held upstairs. Councillor Bernard, I just interjected that. Councillor Bernard went on to say that he had spoken to Public Works on this issue and plans are being drafted to install an elevator to make the upstairs wheelchair accessible also. Marcia Carroll from the Council of Disabilities and Stephen McFadden from the City Public Works have met on site. And it was great to get ideas from Marcia and her staff person. And he wrote to say he hoped that that would help. And then I further asked him about what was being done with the other city facilities to make them accessible, or should I be talking to somebody else within the city? And Terry Bernard said that the civic building maintenance is a responsibility under Public Works, which is why Stephen McFadden from Public Works met with Marcia Carroll from the Council for Disabilities. He went to say that he chaired Parks and Recreation, and he had an interest in making sure that this problem at Hillsborough Community Center didn't happen before. He further said, I can tell you that all the other civic buildings have elevators in them. Now, I wrote to Marcia Carroll and I asked her if she had done a review of the buildings and to ensure that they're in good working order. And I haven't heard back from her yet. And I just wrote that email this morning, that one to her, but that's what I followed up and got from Terry.
Is that your experience, Ryan? That all city buildings have elevators? That's
I can't really. Some of them do, like the government buildings do, but a lot of the government buildings mostly do, like the city,
Yeah.
like that. Like I never really considered that the community, Hillsborough community, like an initial government building. It's a
Oh.
community building, and like as you mentioned, they're going to install an elevator. Do you mean like a chair lift? Like you would get on the chair lift and you press a button and it would raise you up, or like an actual elevator? Like that's a big endeavor to have something like that added to that. I don't know. I don't even know where they would put it.
Well, those were his words. It's an elevator. Yep.
Okay.
And Ryan, like I'm thinking of my own neighborhood. Now Sherwood Hall has a ramp that
Yes.
goes from from the street up to the side door there. So that's accessible. What about the Cody Banks Center, the upstairs in that? Does that have an elevator?
I don't think that does. I think I was up there years ago, but I was lifted. But yeah, I've never.
Well, maybe.
I think there's legislation stating on the building codes at a specific date that you had to put elevators in them. If I may be incorrect in that, but I believe so. Like West Royalty has an elevator.
Okay.
I think after a certain date, and then some are grandfathered in.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's good to know about West Royalty. I'll ask about the Cody Banks, the Maplewood room, and ask what that has.
It really should be an audit of all of the sort of community buildings. I imagine the government buildings are accessible. The university had an audit a few years ago, and they ended up spending millions dealing with a few old buildings which were not accessible.
I know all about that.
Yeah. But I mean, if they're community centers, they certainly must be accessible. And there's got to be a list, and yeah.
Well, again, I haven't written directly to the Stephen McFadgen, but I can write to him and see what I get back from him.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'll do that.
Okay.
What were you going to write, Joanne, again?
I was going to write to Stephen McFadgen, who is connected to the Public Works Department, and ask him if there was an audit of the community buildings done. That is the community centers.
Joanne, I'm thinking, sorry to interrupt you there. I think you asked him, could he provide us the last date of the audit that was conducted on the community buildings?
Oh, good. Please provide us.
I wouldn't use the please. I would just simply state.
Yeah.
I would simply state, please, I would simply state, provide the date, provide the last date of the audits.
Okay, thank you.
On community buildings, yeah. We want the facts, and they all know we're nice.
Yeah.
And is that what I should call them? Community buildings or community centers?
Maybe center.
Okay.
You're on mute,
You're
Mark.
muted.
I'm not sure, but I mean, there's a list of buildings and community centers or halls that they're responsible for.
That might be the best way to put it, responsible, the city of
Yeah.
Charlottetown's responsible for.
Because it's all the
Last
arenas.
date of the audit. I think it's excellent to partner with Marcia Carroll. We have to remove every barrier that we can for all.
That was my idea way back when, to partner with her. I brought her in, because, yeah, I just felt that was an outside board that, needed to know what was happening. Sure, I'll follow up on that. My Christmas cards might not get done this year, you ladies and gentlemen, all this correspondence. And did I tell you my daughter's having a baby next week? But anyway, we'll just pick away. All this stuff might not get done until January when we have Scott Adams. Did you know our next meeting is scheduled for December the 22nd or 21st?
Good grief.
Are we going ahead with that?
That's a little tight.
Yeah, the 21st. Tuesday the 21st.
Hey, I've got an exam that evening.
Oh,
Well, we need a
So
quorum.
can't make
We need
that,
a
sorry.
quorum, maybe.
Can we bump that back a week, you think?
Yeah, maybe we can move
I
that
don't-
to the 14th.
I think that's a great idea. And maybe, like I said, it can sort of be a working meeting like tonight. Like tonight, we're still going strong, but hopefully we won't have all this stuff going on. Sure. Do you want me to, or who? Oh, Sharon, do you want to volunteer, please, to contact Jill Stewart and ask her if it's possible for us to have an online meeting on December the 14th, Tuesday, instead of December the 21st?
yes, I can do that. No problem.
Thank you. Is everybody available Tuesday the 14th?
I'll make myself available
I
if
will.
I'm not.
Okay.
Sharon, contact Jill Stewart. Okay.
Okay. And she'll come back because our meetings have to be public. So if it doesn't fit into that idea, then it has to be rejigged.
has-
Well, we can move it to a Wednesday or Thursday, maybe if that doesn't fit.
So if she comes back with the 14th, maybe I could say the 15th? Or she could suggest another day or what? Okay.
Yeah,
And then I'll get
because
back,
everybody will be scrambling that last week.
and then I'll get back to the committee as soon as I hear.
Okay.
Or you know what, Sharon, have her get back to the committee.
Yes, I'm sorry, yeah.
Yep, just ask her to do it. Thanks.
Okay. And okay, and moving on to our additional new business, number B.
I think that was me.
Yeah.
The last thing I promised, so I'll be quick. Last week, I think, I was the big conference that was in Glasgow about climate change, and there was a webinar that I just tuned into about a new cycling cities initiative that was being launched, and it's basically a sort of like a network for resources for people that want to transform their own cities into cycling cities, aka cities that are easy to cycle around and safe and have lots of the stuff we're working towards. And the one thing that a city can do or a group can do is to take a pledge that they're going to, try to become a cycling city. And I was like, it might be nice if we actually try, like, have this vision of like Charlottetown could be a cycling city in X number of years down the road. Anyway, I wanted to just share the resource with you because they have a tool, and I'll put this in the chat as well. And it's like a quick little quiz that a city or a group can do or anybody could do, because one of our BFC members just did it for Stratford. Actually, I'm going to share my screen again, if you'll forgive me for a second. Just talking about it. So, can you see this now?
Yep.
This is the Grow Cycle. This is their website. Grow Cycling Toolkit. Basically, you put in your little information about your city, and it comes out. This is the report. She did this for Stratford, and it comes out with, like, you know, some specific things that could be done to improve cyclability. And it's got lots of, you know, like, it's clearly these are things that have been tested and have worked in other places. Anyway, it's just something I wanted to share in case we might be interested in pursuing, kind of looking into this or recommending anything. One thing that was said during that conference that I found interesting was that the city of Glasgow has got, like, as a metric, as a goal, the goal of having every citizen in their city living within 800 meters of a protected AT lane. Like, that was the way that they framed it, so that it would be accessible to all. And I kind of really liked that way of thinking about it. I don't know what a similar metric would be for Charlottetown, but I thought it might be, anyway, I don't know what you guys think about that, but I just really like that as, like, a metric, as a goal to work toward. Good night, sweetheart. The other tool I'll just share quickly is this is from WHO, the World Health Organization, and it is a tool that helps places analyze the impact that doing AT and stuff, building AT infrastructure, doing more to do walking and cycling, how much it will improve the health of citizens. I have not dug into this yet. Does that make sense? However it works, which I can't explain to you, it basically helps a city analyze what effect it would have to improve the walking and cyclability of their cities, health of the people that live there. I think it's meant as, like, an advocacy tool.
Like, are you talking about before it's done? Like,
Yeah.
like before the key was made, like what it would do, kind of like a pitch aspect of why it needs to be improved, kind of thing?
I think so. It's my understanding. And here it says it gives an assessment of your current levels, assessment of changes over time. So it basically shows, okay, scenario A with measures taken. So if you do this and this and this to improve the cyclability, the walkability, this will be the effect. If you do not do that, this is the effect. So I think it's an advocacy tool to be used. Anyway, we've had lots on our plate at this meeting, but I just kind of wanted to share those in case anyone wanted to check them out. I can put the links here. Maybe they're useful, maybe they won't be, but it was an interesting session and actually really inspiring to see just how many places around the world and people around the world are working towards the same thing that we're working towards and making changes. So,
Carrie, that's very informative, and it's so helpful to have resources to inspire us. I noticed you posted both of those on Teams, and Richard and Sharon, I don't know if Jason has given you an email or access to Teams yet.
No.
I'm sure he will, but we didn't hear from him tonight, and it could be that he has busy times of the year with his business or his work. So, but it is there, and Carrie, it'll stay on Teams. Sorry, Ryan.
we can send them a message through Teams to let them know, to remind them to do that as well. If,
My email isn't working in Teams.
Okay.
okay.
I sent him a note a while back and I sent him another one, but I didn't hear anything. I'll reach out to him again.
Okay. And okay, moving on to number C. I believe that was
me.
Yeah.
So I guess this is probably more appropriate to bring up with Scott when we meet him. But I would just like to bring your attention to this if I can. So I'm just sharing my screen. These abutments are a real pain. This is just on Queen Street going north. And it's just behind the superstore. But if you see how close the car is to that, so if you're biking down there, the car often can't go out into to give you enough room. And you're going to be riding into that and possibly slipping. And if you fall, you're falling into traffic. These things have got to be a pain in the neck to snowplows as well. So I would really like to bring those to the attention of the public works people and get them stopped, because I think they're dangerous.
Yeah, it doesn't even seem like it's properly put there. Like what's the reason for it even being there?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Those are all actually associated with walking. And they walk out into the middle of the road. There's a crosswalk 15 meters to the south, and there's traffic lights about 20 meters north. And I think there must be sort of people doing it. I don't think it's a city thing, because it's got to be annoying for the city shoveling snow plows. But they are dangerous for cyclists. So I think where the city sort of makes the sidewalk, they put in a new build and there's a house there with a garage. They take up the sidewalk and they slope the sidewalk down so the car can nicely drive up it with not a problem. Doesn't interfere with pedestrians, doesn't interfere with bikes. It's done properly. But I don't know why they do it, but there's quite a lot of them around the city. And when the cars are going, you're on a busy road and the cars are quite close because they don't have any choice, I think they're dangerous. So I'll bring that up to Public Works when we meet. I don't think we can do a motion here, but probably Public Works is the mover for that. But.
And even in the wintertime with the snowplow, wouldn't that bang the snowplow, and like that would be bad. Like I'd like to know when those were put in. Was it this year? Was it last year? Has a snowplow had to go through that? Is that like
those ones that I showed you have been there as long as I've been in the city, because I've been biking up that route pretty much every time I go to work. So they're old.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's all I got.
Okay. Well, it was good to know. I probably see those and don't even notice them, but yeah. All right. And then last one, number D.
That's me. I just was going to bring up, I'm not sure if anyone heard Maritime Connection this week. Preston Mulligan wasn't on, but there was someone else doing it. It was about e-bikes, and it was really interesting. I don't know if anybody heard it, but they have there's someone over there, and they call the person the bike mayor of Halifax. I don't know if you follow them on Twitter, But it was an interesting conversation. Anyway, it was a good listen. I kind of enjoyed it, and it seemed like I was educating myself a little bit more, because there was all kinds of people on there talking about their cycling for purpose and how they get their groceries, and they talked about bike lockers. They talked about certain devices that you can put on your wheels and your seat and so on to ensure that like security of biking is a factor. And that was something that I don't know if it came through my brain a lot. But after I listened to this, I was thinking about that a little bit more and could definitely go back to the email we had about someone who came here and did make a recommendation for bike lockers for security reasons. And anyway, yeah, it's on Maritime Connection. Usually it's Preston Mulligan doing on CBC, and it was on, I think it was on Sunday. But I enjoyed it. Thought I'd share.
Thank you, Margaret. So Maritime Connection on a Sunday. Okay. Yes, that person that wrote to Frank McCackern, and Frank forwarded to the mayor, and the mayor forwarded to us, did recommend bike lockers in the city of Charlottetown, and we forwarded a motion to the ENS committee, and Ramona reported that it was being researched, the cost by her staff, I believe. So that recommendation is still in the works. So anyway, I'd like to listen to that. I can usually find stuff.
And I'd like to listen to it, but I'd also like to see if we can push it so that we can get some here. Like what are we looking for 2022?
Mm-hmm.
You know, what does that look like for the task force? Are we able to move this forward? And they are, you know, there's all kinds of different things. I read the task force funding. You know, I was just reading on that today. So the active transportation funding that's just been released. And I did send a note and ask about it because I could see you could get bike racks. And I wondered about bike lockers. But anyway, I'll see what they come back on. But there's yeah, there's some really good, then I got down the bike train pretty well. And so I started following every person, you know, Bike Ottawa and whatnot. So the Bike Mayor of Halifax presented, I believe, to Bike Ottawa and did a presentation there. And I thought it might be something interesting for us to think about. And Carrie, you may know way more about this than I do, but it was an interesting listen for sure.
Oh, Halifax has very much moved way ahead with their bike lanes, and that's been observed the last, well, 2 years. It's amazing, you know, with the funding and things going in there. Well, that's pretty inspiring for the city of Charlottetown. I think we're making progress.
Yeah, I've never heard of a bike locker. It sounds. Where would you like? Yeah, I just think of a locker, and you'd have to put the bike up in the locker.
Yeah, what is
I'm not even sure what it looks like either, Ryan, but this tourist who was very well versed on everything said that usually it's in parkade, like the city parkade, and your bikes could be locked in there safely. Like say if you were staying at a tourist home, or you know, even a hotel without a parkade or whatever, you might be able to put your bike in a bike locker in one of the city parkades and keep it safely overnight, or for the day while you walk around Charlottetown and not be worried that somebody's going to break your bike lock, you know, that sort of thing.
Yeah. So I know a fair amount of people that have had their bikes stolen recently. They ended up getting it back, but that was having something like that might be, yeah, very beneficial down the road. Definitely. And okay. Any other additional new business? Any? Well, I think that's the end of the meeting, and we can adjourn the meeting till next the 14th if we get word that the 14th is a good day that it can be done. I think that's definitely a better time than the final week of Christmas. So,
I agree.
and so for next week, we should have at least one question each that we can discuss for Scott Adams. Okay.
Sounds
So
good.
with that being said, the meeting is now adjourned.
Thank you, Ryan.